Going back to the two-dimensional gameplay style of the original Metroid games may not have been what myself and many gamers were hoping to see from the next title in the Metroid series. I was kind of hoping for Metroid Prime sequel myself. But for Samus to return to relevance in this gaming generation, it was time for her to go back to a place that maybe seemed empty and used up first. And many times in life we're tasked with the exact same problem as we try to figure out how to get from the broken place that we're currently at to the future that we're trying to reach.
Regardless of our previous potential, when we have either experienced a shattering, life-altering event,
like how Samus did her best work on consoles that were doomed to failure, like the GameCube.
Or perhaps committed a compromising moral failure,
like the train wreck that was Metroid Other M.
It is exceptionally difficult to figure out how to get back on track. And in the story of Elisha and the widow, we learn a very similar lesson as we take a look at someone who experienced some life-altering setbacks of her own and had to use some very empty things in order to move forward.
The poor widow in the story was in more than just one tough spot. She was dealing with the emotional brokenness of losing her God-fearing husband, and she was also just, plain broke. To make matters worse, her children were going to be taken by her creditors, leaving her with nothing more than a broken heart, shattered dreams, and a mountain of debt, and a lot of disappointment.
When she was taking stock of her available assets, she had only one thing left to her name that had any type of value, which was one lonely jar of oil, the only thing remaining from her past. And I'm not even sure one would consider this an asset. Oil, no? Maybe car oil now. It was almost more a souvenir of a life that was now firmly in her past. But this was more than just a reminder of her dreams she used to have, the lamps she used to light with the oil, and the family dinners that were cooked with the oil. This simple jar of oil was the building block for her future.
Perhaps you, like this widow, feel like you're surrounded by nothing but empty vessels, barren jars that once held your dreams and visions of how your life would turn out. Maybe you, like Samus, feel like your best years are behind you, leaving nothing behind but empty reminders of the dreams that you used to believe in, a past you once enjoyed, and a present that's full of heartaches and regrets. The path forward may not necessarily mean that it's time to let go of those dreams that the Lord had placed on your heart. It may simply mean that our attempts to fill those jars on our own are finally at an end.
And if we surrender those empty vessels to the Lord and obediently follow Him through the valley of the shadow of death, He can fill them in a way we would have never believed or anticipated. It may not make sense, and it rarely does.
But the same God who paradoxically brought us eternal life through His own Son's death specializes in making miraculous provision in places where the bones are already dry, the grave is already sealed, and what we currently have is not near enough to supply the need.
Now, dust off those dreams you gave up on. If the Lord placed them in your heart, He can still fulfill them, even if this empty and broken place you find yourself in right now. Take it from Samus. Sometimes the way forward isn't to simply move on from the pain and emptiness of the past, but to embrace those old dreams and let them come to life again in this new and unfamiliar place.
So stop being ashamed of where you came from. That is merely your prologue. And don't allow the pain of the past to obscure the reality that your current state of emptiness, when obediently yielded to the Lord, can still be multiplied into a future full of hope and joy. That old jar of oil that represents the promises that He gave you when the times were still good, it still has more than enough left in it, as long as we're willing to bring every empty part of ourselves back to Him to fill them up.